We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. 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 Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. 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 Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. 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 Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. 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 Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. 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 Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. 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 Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. 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 Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. 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 Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. Yeah, we're ready. 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 Yeah, we're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready. We're ready for the road. ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. So we're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. So we're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. So we're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road.
So good afternoon again, everybody, and welcome back. Welcome back to Education, the Remix. Whole heap of mix-up happening here behind the scenes, so we apologize. But as you know, this is what happens, right? Life happens, and technology sometimes doesn't do what it's supposed to do, and then we get all disoriented, but we find our center again. And we start all over. So I want to thank you. This is what happens in education and in life and in work, where we have to juggle when life throws us stuff. So thank you all for getting back on here. I appreciate you being here. I'm looking forward to this session, and I've been looking forward to it since, you know, we started discussing what would happen. And it's because I have some amazing people who are going to be sharing. I admire all of them and all of the work that they do in their various spheres, and they're people who I lean on a lot for advice and just for inspiration. So moderating today is going to be Marvin Hall, and he is dynamo. I'll introduce it to him in a moment. And then we also have Ali Matalon, who is just such a bright rising star, and I think she's doing a lot for Jamaica in terms of helping us to look at corporate social responsibility and to doing good. And now more than ever, we need to be doing good. And we need our children to understand that we need to be doing good in this world. And so I'm grateful to have her here as well. And Tyrone Wilson is such a boss businessman. And he is also contributing in the education and training space. And he has done so well for himself. He's so driven. And he is CEO and president and CEO of iCreate EDU. So he will tell you more about himself. And Nicole McLaren is many things. And she continues to reinvent and pivot. And I think so many people can learn from Nicole's drive and resilience and passion. And she will tell you so much about where all of that comes from, and then what the future should look like. How do you build people who have that drive and passion as you teach? Because we know that that is critical. So Marvin Hall, let me introduce the guy who's going to take us through for the next few minutes. So Marvin has been at the forefront of STEM education for more than a decade. He's been bringing the learning revolution long before the learning revolution was a thing. Brought Lego to Jamaica, made Lego a thing. When we thought it was just a toy, it's actually a learning tool. So his company is called Halls of Learning, and he is a learning provider of engineering and robotics and coding education in Jamaica. And he's presently serving over a dozen primary and secondary schools and more than 2,000 children annually. Marvin is a computer science and mathematics guy. That's what his training is in. He has a master's in educational and training systems from the University of Trent, and then he went to the University of the West Indies as well. He's a TED Fellow. Oh my gosh, so many things. And Marvin, I'm delighted that you agreed to host this session, and I'm so excited to hear all of the discussion that will come out of what makes us, what we need to do in order to prepare for the future, to future-proof our society and our region, so that we'll be ready to face crises like the ones we have. There's so much opportunity there, so I'm excited. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. And sit tight, grab your pencils, grab your notebook, grab your phone, wherever it is that you jot down your thoughts and things that resonate with you. Grab it and let's enjoy. Go ahead, Marvin.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks for inviting me to moderate. I'm very excited to be a part of the panel along with Nicole, Ali, and Tyrone. It's very interesting times that we're in. And before we start, I'll just ask them to introduce themselves quickly, starting with Nicole, then Ali, then Tyrone.
Okay, I'm Nicole McLaren-Campbell. Renee left off the Campbell, but I'll add it back on, Renee, no worries. And I started AIM, which was previously AIM Educational Services, now AIM Online Academy, about 10 years ago. Very passionate about helping students to reach their college goals and achieve success in the classroom and beyond the classroom to life in general. That's me.
Thanks, Nicole. All right, Ali.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ali Matalon. I'm the founder and managing director of CorpCare Social Impact Consultants Limited. We're a really young company. We started last year. We're what a lot of people would classify as a social business. We're a corporate social responsibility strategy and execution firm for businesses and organizations seeking to do more, not just internally with their organization, but for the communities that they exist in. So I'm really excited to share today a little bit more about how that can connect to the future of our education. Thanks, Marvin.
Thanks, Ali. Over to you, Tyrone.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I am Tyrone Wilson, President and CEO of iCreate Limited. We are a digital and creative training institute with the aim of developing our regional creative economy. Happy to be here this afternoon.
All right, thanks, Tyrone. So let's get into it. The title of this panel is Future Proof. What should education and learning look like? And we're going to start off by discussing education and learning in the future. Our panelists agreed to a pre-panel activity. They were surprised to get homework for a panel, but they built models which will show what they think about education in relation to what it is now. And then they also build models to show what they think it should reflect in the future. And then we're going to get into thinking about future planning and future proofing. And this is a very important concept where we look at how we design education and learning to anticipate future events and to be able to withstand the unexpected. After that, we're going to talk about the role of different stakeholders in future proofing education and learning in Jamaica. So we're going to talk about family, schools, teachers, business, and government. So just to frame the discussion for everyone in the audience, I'm going to start with a few quotes. And this one is from Yasmin Sharif. She's the director of Education Cannot Wait. She says, the world has not planned well for the future. At its worst, education has for too long been under-prioritized and at best has been viewed as just one of many competing priorities. Next quote. The pandemic has exacerbated inequalities and magnified the global learning crisis. The future of an entire generation is at risk. The COVID-19 pandemic has created the largest disruption of education systems in history. That's from Antonio Guterres. He's the United Nations Secretary General. And then last is a favorite one of mine, which has been around for a long time, and it's from Alvin Toffler. He's a futurist. He's the author of Future Shock, Revolutionary Wealth, and a few other books. He says, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And so when we look to the future, we're going to be thinking about how we relearn things. Let me start off with the models, the presentation of the models. So as I said, each panelist built a model to show what they think education and learning is now. And let's start with Nicole. I want to see your model and give you a chance to talk about it, what education and learning is now.
Okay. So this was what I came up with for what education looks like now. By the way, I totally resisted this activity. So, oops, no, I'm breaking stuff. I resisted this activity a lot because I'm not like accustomed or in my comfort zone with building models of anything, but learning has to be about adaptability and unlearning and relearning, as Marvin just said. So anyway, just sort of the teacher at the front, students hopping on the kind of steps, the big staircase to education, and they just kind of follow one road and they go up, and the idea is to get to be above the teacher in a way, because I feel like as if teachers aren't as respected as they should be, or ascribed with the importance in our society as they should be. And these are kind of the gates, or like the kind of hallmark, the focal point, and everybody has to do what the teacher says, pay attention, and that's their way to success. But then along the way, students who don't fit into that mold kind of fall off. They fall off into the wilderness, or as an alternative to traditional education here, they go off into more interesting things, like things that spin and are pink and green over here, which are outside of the kind of mainstream, because the mainstream is kind of like boring and straight-laced. Yeah, so that's my model of what exists now.
Thanks, Nicole. You mentioned that teachers aren't being considered as aspirational in terms of professional.
The average student out there, certainly by high school, you know what they want to do or be. You won't see teacher as a hugely popular aspiration. It's more like as if, well, if you'll fall into it if you don't have a choice. Not to say there aren't students who have a genuine passion from really early for teaching, but it's not elevated in our minds.
All right, so later on we want to discuss more how we can elevate the status of teacher in the society. Let's go on to Ali. Can you present your model of education and learning now?
Sure. Thank you, Marvin. So my model one is pretty simple. It's a classroom with the teacher at the front with their blackboard or whiteboard. These are the students' desks. All of the students are pretty monochromatic, pretty much the same in terms of they're receiving all the same information from the teacher. They're all being treated pretty similarly by the teacher from the perspective that the curriculum is not super reflective of their individual needs or circumstances. As well as it's very demonstrative of just the kind of hierarchical realities of our current education system, whereby the teacher stands up at the front, lectures, and doesn't necessarily engage the student in more dynamic ways, as we've begun to see. My teacher fell off the classroom, but my teacher is back on. The teacher didn't like the way I was speaking about the classroom, so the teacher left the classroom. But yeah, so this is my classroom model of what's happening now, Marvin.
All right, thanks, Ali. So a question for you: what do you think has caused this structure in the current classroom scenario?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm just not sure that there are available enough resources to change this dynamic dramatically in order to cater for students with a variety of abilities, students from different socioeconomic backgrounds, racial backgrounds, etc. I think a big issue with this is just a lack of resources and a lack of investment in alternatives or exploring and experimenting with alternatives.
So you're saying a kind of one-size-fits-all approach, assembly line type of education is what we're looking at now then?
Yes.
All right, we can talk more about that later. Let's move on to Tyrone.
Yes, thank you, Marvin. Well, pretty much a very simple model of what exists today, which is, brick and mortar education space. Flag represents the location. These are the individuals, so the eyes here, individuals who are very attentive to who is, person dropped off also, but this person represents whether the supervisor, grade supervisor, principal, teacher, or just the authority here in person, which whoever is absent here pretty much doesn't get to absorb whatever is taught, and they miss out. So that's the model for me.
Thanks, Tyrone. Just a quick question. What do you think allowed us to have the teacher as the authority on learning?
Well, I think predominantly it's just link with how we've been introduced to education from, whether before independence, during, the times that, before slavery and so forth, just what it is. And not to, have it as a blame in terms of who, but we just haven't evolved since then, right? I think education now is beyond just a teacher itself, but more content generation and so forth,
Thanks, Tyrone. So we wanted to know that the education system seems as if it's slow to evolve, if I can summarize what Tyrone was saying. All right, thank you. On to model number 2, which is education and learning in the future. Your teacher ready? Your teacher standing up strong, Nicole, are you ready?
All right, I think my teacher is strong and ready. I just don't know if I am. I'm kidding. All right, so this is education in the future for me, and it's like really flexible. You like what I did there? Oh crap! There. This is what happens when you're trying to be too excited. Anyways, listen to the point. It's flexible, so it's not like a closed door. And the fact that the door, sort of opens and can move means that it's more inclusive. I took the legs off the teacher to bring the teacher down a bit in terms of like less of teacher as the authority and the holder of all knowledge and whatever the teacher says is right, because I think the future of learning needs to acknowledge and respect the learner more. And I think access to information is such where the teacher is no longer the holder of all information. Your student might know something more about this area or have just read a new development in a certain, and you need to give space to that. I think right now we don't give students enough space and respect for their voice and their thoughts and what they're bringing to the table. If you're not doing it, teach away, you're wrong, kind of thing. So, opening up and bringing the teacher just on a more relatable level. The arches are supposed to be more welcoming. All right, once you come in, right? The reason that the flag was here is because the flag kind of represents where everybody kind of comes into this one space and they're learning core life skills, core, how to learn, how to adapt to change. Just like core skills that no matter what area you're going into in life, these are going to help you. This is part of what it means to be educated. And then everybody goes off in their different directions. So blue man is comfortable to go off here once he's going off the base, right? Red man over here, green man over here, orange man over here. No references in particular, just so you notice we have all colors. So the point is that you've done the core, you've gotten the base, and this eye over here is making sure that you've actually learned these things, emotional intelligence, all those things. Mr. Facilitator, teacher, just welcoming evermore. And then after that, you're welcome, blessed, and equipped to go off in any direction you want. And it's respected and it's fine and yeah, inclusive.
Awesome. Thanks, Nicole. So we see in your future of education, or at least one idea, the idea of a more flexible learning environment, and one where the learner has more respect and
Exactly.
is given more power
Right.
in the process of their learning.
Absolutely.
And then also, which I noticed you made great emphasis on, the fact that there are skills that should be focused on. So we see in the future of education, based on this idea, more of a focus on skills.
Absolutely.
So lifelong learning skills, you know, the emotional intelligence, the things that you can use for the rest of your life.
Absolutely. Because I really do believe that we need to be thinking about the success of our students long term. What are the things they're going to need to have successful lives, to be responsible citizens, to build a society that we all want to be a part of? That deserves as much emphasis as, you know, core math skills, for example, because a lot of them acquire the skills and then they go into life and they can't function. You don't just function by being able to get an A, you know?
I love that. Love that. Ready with model number 2. Thanks, Nicole.
Me, Marvin?
You, Ali.
Okay, cool. So this is my model for education of the future. So as you can see, it's a lot more spread out than my classroom in Model 1. I had to borrow the teacher from Model 1 because they're coming with us to the future, right? So this is Model 2. It's a lot of different areas, subject areas, areas of expertise. There's bridges for students to go on. All of these little yellow heads are students. And then these people with legs here are teachers, and all the teachers are in motion, as you can see. And there's different points of connectivity between the students and the teachers. There's ladders, there's bridges, there's steps, there's slides. All of the students bring something unique to the table that can be shared across the board. And all of the teachers are interested in moving across the board and engaging with students at their level or where they'd like to be engaged. And I think it would just create for a much more inclusive and productive environment for students to explore who they are and what they want to learn.
Nice, thanks, Ali. So you're saying then you want to see the environment be more diverse, more inclusive, and what, you know, in terms of and allowing for a lot of different types of things to happen in the same space. So multiple inputs, multiple outputs.
Absolutely.
Type of thing.
Absolutely. I think that would be beneficial for our students, our teachers, and our parents.
Okay, awesome. All right, Tyrone. Thanks, Ali. Tyrone, second model.
All right. So this one now brings into play devices, you know, as opposed to the typical brick and mortar model before. This is now the instructor really speaking to a camera. You know, this represents the device right here in the center, and then that information, this is the centerpiece, but then the information is being disseminated to, you know, on these screens now to different folks, different, you know, the red, the green, the orange, you know, pretty much different learners in different space at different time, which represents what the future of education should be like, you know, in terms of, you know, not a physical space, but more content being distributed at different points in time to different types of people based on their demand and interest. as opposed to the type of curriculum that will force upon them, whether at whatever level, whether it's primary, secondary, tertiary, or even postgraduate.
Lovely, lovely. So,
Yeah.
Tyrone, you're talking about a flexible curriculum, right? You're talking about learners getting to pick and choose based on interest. You're talking about the concept that, you know, technology is going to play a more central role or a more mediating role in education, which will allow it to not be dependent on time or location or any specific fixed interest.
Yes.
Yes, and so, you know, we see some of that happening in the future. Well, we see it happening now.
Right now, yes.
Right, but you said a very important word, curriculum.
Yes.
Because we know that for schools, it's the curriculum that is handed to the teacher, that was handed to the school, that really drives what happens. So, you know, how can we work on the curriculum? How do you see the curriculum integrating more into, or the creation of curriculum in the future environments? How do you see that playing out?
Well, that is one area that we need a lot of investment in. As you can realize, the you know, technology is changing a lot of things at a very fast pace, you know, and the things that you learn, for example, you know, in a 3-4 year degree, by the time you graduate, it has changed so much, right? Even devices that you learn from, and the problems that you try to learn to solve and so forth. You know, things have gotten a lot more dynamic. So even realize a pandemic, for example, we have this COVID-19 now. The minute it came, what we were used to, you know, walking into a physical location to purchase a good or whatever it is, that changed drastically in just a month, right? And businesses, I mean, I experienced it in my own training company. A lot of businesses start to come to you to upskill and reskill their employees, to teach them how to conduct commerce online and all of these different things. So the curriculum, we need to invest in a lot more, need to be a lot more dollar being invested in terms of curriculum development, to make it more flexible, to change it as quick as technology and realities around us are changing, so that you know, individuals can adapt to, you know, new technologies way quicker and so forth, and that we as a third world country or developing country can invest more in creating as opposed to consuming.
Nice. I'm going to leave you with something to think about, which I want you to respond to later on. But who should develop that curriculum? Let's think about that, and we'll save that. We'll save that for a deeper discussion later on. All right, thank you guys. Thank you for making those models, doing what you're not accustomed to, not into, out of your comfort zone. I think it's demonstrative of what also needs to happen in education in terms of making a shift and trying to you know, represent a future that can actually work towards the interests of our children. All right, now we're going to go into some specific questions directed to each of the panelists. And I have 2 questions for each panelist. So I'll start with Nicole, and then, you know, if any of the other panelists would like to ask her a question about her response, then, you know, we'll continue the discussion there. But that would be the process for each. So Nicole first, Ali next, and then Tyrone afterwards. All right, Nicole, so your first question. What are the gaps that secondary schools can fill in the future to prepare stronger candidates for very competitive spaces in higher learning? I know we kind of spoke towards it already, but now we get to dive into more detail.
I think, so I think what we do a really great job of in many of our schools is preparing academically ready students. I mean, we can't get away from the fact that these kids, they know how to do the work they know how to study, they know how to get the job done. I'm speaking specifically, by the way, to the subset of students who are even applying to highly competitive universities in the first place. So these kids are ready, they know what to do, they can do the work. What has happened in competitive college admission is that now colleges are looking for more than just people who can do the work. So, you'll get the ones, you'll get all the A's, you'll have the high GPA, you pull the high SAT score. But what about now your impact? Not just joining a bunch of activities, but actual impact. And so this is requiring more emphasis on the students' individual initiative, more emphasis on students actually solving problems. So I saw a model of a high school in the US recently that has integrated a co-op sort of system into their curriculum, where the students actually have to go and work within organizations that have identified problems. The students pitch solutions and then actually have to implement them. And this gives them not just a level of responsibility and ability to problem solve and function in that real world environment that tends to be very attractive and stand out. I think overall, just pushing students to get real world experience and to follow their interests, no matter how out of the box they may seem. I've had students have scholarships for starting skateboard clubs. And when the parents came to me, they're like, oh, he's interested in skateboarding. That's not going to do anything. I'm like, but it's an interest. Let's see where it goes. And you know what? It stood out. And another student who was interested in how exactly cheese was made and led a whole activity with her friends touring factories. She got a really good scholarship. Again, that was just her interest. So it's just, again, respecting the interest and creating opportunities for students to pursue them. More linked with industry and things like that, organizations.
All right, thanks, Nicole. Just a follow-up, one could say that extracurricular clubs typically fill this gap. But how do you respond to the idea that, there are extracurricular clubs, but what more needs to happen? Because clearly you're seeing these gaps anyway, even though you have children in extracurricular clubs doing different activities.
Right.
What more still needs to be done?
So what I've found in my experience too is that students is just seeing themselves as a change maker. Like I'll have many students who, not enough of our students see themselves as being able to change the problem. So they say, yeah, I'm interested in IT. There's an IT club, but it's boring and nobody goes. That's an opportunity for you to go, introduce some new initiatives, shake it up, do a membership drive, and transform the whole thing. So it's just like about, yes, sometimes the clubs exist, but are the students thinking outside of the box enough and doing enough to have an impact, as opposed to just following the order of how things have always been done and just kind of moving with the flow. And so they have good ideas, they're highly creative and sort of just encouraging and facilitating that a bit more. And then what I thought of was actual programs with organizations. And I know a couple of schools do already have it set up. I think Satyakar and JC has something, I don't remember, but just more of those linkages with organizations and NGOs and corporations and all those things, where students can get work experience as part of their high school training, I think is awesome. And schools have made great strides in setting up community service opportunities, which I applaud and think, that's the right direction that we're going in for sure.
Thanks, Nicole. That's actually a nice segue into my first question for Ali. And that question is, what can schools learn from business that could improve education and learning in the future?
Sure, thanks, Marvin. Can you hear me? Can everybody hear me? Marvin, you hearing me okay?
I'm hearing you okay.
Okay, perfect. Okay, awesome. Yeah, so, I love all of what Nicole said about integrating businesses into high schools and engaging companies, for example, through clubs, so that students are able to build relationships with these organizations so that they can better understand the skills that they need in order to join those organizations, whether as interns or employees. But I think the best businesses are the businesses that are the most agile, right? They're constantly engaged in a space of transformation or at minimum iteration to meet the needs of
Use the AI.
Sorry. I think Nicole's mic may have just been unmuted for a second. I think this is one of the, the primary lessons that schools can learn from the business world. It may not be the easiest thing, for example, to facilitate constant change in the context of curricula, but we certainly have an array of educational tools at our disposal from which to best serve different kinds of students, right? Different learning types, etc. And that best serves the customer or the student, creating the best possible product for the customer and for our society, right? Because I think that both schools and businesses impact our communities as we churn out products or impart lessons to children. We have to ensure that the impacts are as positive as possible. So I think that that's really the primary lesson I'd say that schools can take from the business community, is just that constant engagement and iteration and agility for the sake of producing the best possible product.
Nice. I'm going to take it a little deeper. How can the businesses form stronger relationships and specifically at the secondary school level in order to develop these skill sets that they require in the future workforce?
So I promise this is not a plug of CorpCare at all, but that's really one of the things that we're trying to actually encourage with corporate social responsibility on an internal and external level, right? So doing good for businesses means that the businesses do well, and a lot of businesses complain about the talent pipeline coming out of high schools or tertiary education into businesses. They say that maybe the skills are not best suited to the business environment, that maybe our skills are predominantly academic, but businesses also need to take initiative and engage with academic institutions to ensure that they're asking for the type of skills that they need to be taught in the classroom, right? So I think that that's a super mutually beneficial relationship. And I think the first place that businesses can start is in their communities, right? So the community that they operate in, or the community that is most predominantly occupied by their consumers, right? So they can start partnering with schools in their area. Maybe it's a early childhood education institution, like a basic school. A lot of companies exist in Jamaica in areas where there are a lot of basic schools, but maybe it's also a secondary institution, like you mentioned before, where it's a high school and that company can offer things like short-term or part-time internships that really focus a lot of their energy on mentorship and engagement and hard skills as well as soft skills for entering the workforce. Did that answer your question, Marvin? I feel like it was a little bit all over the place.
No, it did, and it begins to answer the question. Obviously, you can't answer it in the depth that you want to in this forum, but I love that you're working in that space that is bringing businesses closer to their responsibility, and the responsibility being schools as one of the responsibilities that they could have out there, and starting those conversations between schools and business, because typically we see that schools are talking to business when they want money, right, which is necessary. Don't get me wrong, but it also opens the door, based on what you're saying, for other conversations to take place, which not just impact putting up a sign at a school to say you donated money for a particular thing, but also the conversation about the workforce and the skills that we need in the future to serve our consumers in the future. I love that. I love that space. Thanks, Ali. I'm gonna go back to Nicole and tie it all in, because we're at the secondary level now and we're gonna go up to the tertiary. So I want to hear from you, Nicole. What are the gaps in the curricular offerings of the local tertiary institutions that, if we fill those things, we could have more students who would have otherwise gone overseas decide to do their tertiary education in Jamaica?
Okay, so So I think that we do always, of course, and again, I like Ali, not a shameless plug at all, but I do think that there is a benefit to that can be had from, you know, living abroad, from studying abroad. There's a sort of perspective that you do get and a good experience, and it serves Jamaica, especially when you come home and return and give back, right? That said, I think that our local institutions could be a more attractive option if we just go back and look at, well, why do students want to study abroad? Or what are some of the benefits? So having exposure to, you know, an international population, to people with different ideas and thoughts, you learn to become a global citizen. So, you know, our local universities could do more to attract more international students. Certainly the value proposition is there. UWI is globally ranked. It is way cheaper as a non-Jamaica, non-Caribbean citizen to get a degree here versus in many schools in the States. Jamaica is, I mean, who wouldn't want to study in Jamaica for 4 years? It's like a dream. And I've spoken to some, like I have friends at UWI who are doing masters there who are from the US, and they're just in awe and in love. So I think we could do more to sell UWI as a destination for non-Jamaicans, non-Caribbean students to come, create a more international population. Certainly that would attract more, have more students wanting to stay. There are the deliverable, not just from a local institution, but from a US institution, from US institutions, is under scrutiny because it has become so expensive in the US at almost $80,000 US a year for some of these private schools. And so parents are saying, well, show me the money, show me the return. What is the career? Where are these kids going? How much success they're having? So I think local institutions, if they want to attract more students, could build tighter, and there are these job fairs and all of these things, but tighter relationships, again, as Ali just said, with corporations, with local industry, because, you know, these overseas schools that have co-op programs where working is a part of your degree that you get college credit for and also get paid for. That's how a lot of jobs hire these days. As an employer, it's way better to go with a proven product, somebody who knows the culture of your business, has worked successfully for summers. You prefer to hire that than to go out cold where you're not sure what you're getting when you're hiring, right? And so, you know, tighter relationships with industry where you show the career progression and you show that return on investment very clearly. I think that would go a super long way. I think that doing more to integrate high quality learning experiences, using virtual reality, using, you know, the technology that we do have from actual practitioners. I think we're seeing more and more parents be like, well, I want somebody who has actually done this thing to teach my kid. I want, you know, so I think just to, and so not to say there is a value as well in the teacher who knows the theory, who knows how to teach, because it's not just like everybody, just because he can do it, he can teach it. And I respect that and I know that, right? But just introducing more of those experiential learning type of activities into the classroom from practitioners is gonna be, it would attract more students, I believe. And then last but certainly not least, and I know UWI is doing it already, but scaling up of that across the board would be those exchange opportunities. You'd be surprised that a lot of students go to certain schools because they're like, oh, they have a good study abroad program. Literally, that's actually what happens. And so if there was, you know, a more of an emphasis on come to UWI, but you're going to spend a year over there, or you can spend a year there, and just having these agreements with overseas schools. I know they do it a lot with Canada, but just more in partnerships with institutions in Europe and UK. And that would be very attractive for Caribbean or Jamaican students to say, I choose UWI, but I still get a global education and a global experience.
That sounds like some $1 million advice for UWI. I hope UWI and any other tertiary institution. You know, thanks, Nicole. You know, it's interesting because you touched on a point that essentially is suggesting that tertiary institutions look at themselves as like a tourist product, right? As a destination, as somewhere that is you're coming there because of the location. Yes, you're going to get the learning. You're coming there because it is that location that you are attracted to. So in the same way that we have an attractive tourism product to what 5 million people each year. I don't know what the exact number is, but we could have that same thing for universities.
Absolutely.
Yeah, man, that's an awesome thought and an awesome idea. And then you know you spoke about experiential learning from practitioners, because we see more and more that what validates you in the real world is the knowing how to do something, right? And knowing how to do something well. So
Yeah.
I actually did co-op in college, which Nicole knows about because she helped me to get into grad school. And I think that that's one of the reasons that I was able to get into grad school, because I had so much work experience from college. I almost had like 2.5 years worth of concentrated work experience from college. So the grad school knew exactly what they were getting into. I only had 1 year outside of college.
Ali, please say that again because your mic was a little low, please.
Sure. Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was saying that, you know, I love what Nicole said about the co-op and work experience in college aspect of tertiary level education, because I benefited from the co-op experience at Northeastern University. And I think, you know, Nicole helped me to get into grad school. And I think it's one of the big reasons why I got in to Columbia to do my master's, was because I had so many years of work experience despite my age. Because I only took 1 year in between undergrad and grad school, but I ended up with about 3.5 years of concentrated work experience by the end, which made it easy for not just Columbia to see what they were getting me as a student, but also for any companies that I work with now, coming out of grad school, to understand that it's not necessarily my first time in X or Y environment, because I was exposed to that during college while I was getting an undergraduate degree.
Nice.
And the university, so that you could do it full-time or part-time, which is really awesome.
Okay, nice. I mean, we see this idea of skills coming back up, you know, the curriculum preparing us for the skills of the future, for, you know, nurturing our talents and interests. And, you know, Nicole touched on something that ties back into kind of what Tyrone was saying in terms of, you know, the use of technology and technology changing. And in terms of pitching, you mentioned pitching to local industry, but what about pitching to overseas industry? Because the times that we're in, the work from home can be anywhere, home can be Jamaica. And some of these same tech companies that want skills or who have sent employees home, then does it really matter where they are? You know, so it's an important conversation to have, Nicole, in terms of the tertiary institutions looking not just locally,
Very key.
but overseas as well.
Very key, because in the chat you'd have seen where a teacher just said, well, I teach in the rural areas, what about my kids? And you just answered the question so wonderfully. I think the key is looking at energy access, reliable energy access, and internet access. Is a major key to make sure that certain schools and children don't get left behind. But when it comes to work experience, hello, we have gone virtual for sure. So I think the onus too, I want to emphasize, is on our schools working with the companies to make sure that an effective program is designed, because just sitting there filing might teach you a thing or two about patience and responsibility, but does it really allow you to use your talents and skills and actually learn in a meaningful way? Not really, in many cases. So just moving beyond the whole, a summer job is filing, to, hey, these kids are smart and they are an asset, and how can that asset be deployed in my organization? I have my stepdaughter doing my business TikTok right now. I don't know how to do that. She's great. Solid marketing.
I love it. Yes, you know, let me hear from a friend, Tyrone. I don't want him to stay silent because he has a wonderful mind and brilliant ideas. So let's bring him in here as he talk about access to, you know, in rural areas. So Tyrone, your question, what are some of the novel ways that students can receive instruction across the system? And when I say across the system, I mean the educational system. and things that will improve education and learning in the future, not just receive, improve.
Well, Marvin, if we go back a little bit to the first the first model, in terms of it being in a physical place for years, I mean, typically there's not much we could have done in the 90s and so forth with advancement of technology, but now moving into this fourth industrial revolution era where even 5G is going to change, or a lot of things are delivered, healthcare, education, and so forth, and even remote business, remote, work from home and so forth. And you would have experienced that a lot more in certain countries like China, for example, where it's a bit more advanced, 5G technology and so forth. But that can pretty much remove the barrier now is if we invest a lot more in delivering education in a more diverse way, as opposed to how it is being delivered now. And how it's being delivered now is just pretty much a typical, primary, secondary, tertiary, and your postgrad, masters, and so forth, where you pretty much have to be in a classroom. And not only is that a challenge when you move that to Zoom classes and so forth, when you move to like Zoom classes, you still have to be there at this specific time. And it is difficult. I mean, even for us at iCreate, we experience it in pivoting to deliver content electronically, digitally, and so forth to various devices. It still is limited sometimes to, live classes. But how do we change that now? So individuals, for example, in rural areas and so forth can benefit is to invest a lot more in creating content, right? And when I say creating content, I'm talking about content now for educational purposes, pre-record the classes, the practical exercise, utilizing the tools, for online learning and so forth, the quiz, real-time data, how do you, measure attendance and so forth. If this person was in class today, watch all the videos before moving to the next step. And a lot of universities locally and high schools are experiencing a major challenge now in this COVID pandemic, where obviously people can get into physical classrooms. And for some typical classes, people are okay, but then with the more complex lessons and so forth, mathematics, medicine, engineering, some of the practical stuff like architecture, interior design, for us, video production, photography, graphic design, a lot of these different areas, how do we manage in this area, in this era, and how do we get the content to individuals who don't have, for example, the tablets, who don't have the smartphones, who don't have the computers and so forth? How do we include them? So there's going to be a huge divide, for example, in this period for individuals who are more disadvantaged, and that is something we need to invest in. And I think obviously for now, it is more difficult to solve because we are in the pandemic, we're trying to survive, much less innovate. But I think it comes back to the fundamentals of the fact that we have to always be investing in the future, right? The problem is that we sit and wait for something to happen to us before we start to figure out how do we, plan for this, how do we execute this, how do we do that? We have to plan and invest in the future. And our curriculum, at whatever level it is, does not represent one, and I can say this clearly, without any fear of backlash or so forth. Our curriculum isn't forward thinking enough, right? I did banking and finance, and by the time I finished banking and finance, a lot changed in the industry. For example, the junior stock exchange was introduced by the time I finished banking and finance, for example. The bond market was introduced on the stock exchange, and when you finish a degree now, it's now short skills training, short courses. We have to invest a lot in that here in Jamaica to ensure that you finish a a degree in medicine, for example, maybe you can do a short course in this, you can do a short course in, you know, pandemic medicine or whatever it is, you know. We have to invest a lot more in the future as it relates to education, and that doesn't just involve the content itself of the course, but also the delivery mechanisms. So we have to be a lot more curious about education and how we deliver it and so forth.
Thanks, Tyrone. Yes, the need to invest in content is essential. And when we get to the future proofing part, I'm going to come back to you on that, because again, just like the curriculum, who determines the curriculum? Who determines the content? Because we want to also be investing in content in an organized fashion. We don't want people all over the place doing different types of content that there's no sort of synergy. If we're thinking nationally and we're thinking of investing in the future, then there has to be some organization around the types of things that we invest in. But no matter what, the teacher is still key, still going to play a significant and important role, whether online or offline. And so that ties back into my next question for you, Tyrone, which is what do teachers need to learn at our training institutions, our teachers' colleges, that will improve their ability to use digital media in the future?
Well, it is so diverse. I think when you look at the tech companies today, right, some of the largest tech companies around the world, they've become so much more than what they started out as. They're entertainment companies, right? Apple TV, Amazon Prime, right? They're also music publishers and distributors. They're delivering education. And we look at Microsoft buying, LinkedIn buying Linda, and then Microsoft buying LinkedIn, right? We look at Apple, for example, with their iBooks and their education section. We're looking at Google Digital Garage now, for example, that's delivering digital marketing content and so forth. These guys realize that they have a distribution mechanism at the center of everything, and they use that to tap into and disrupt every single thing possible: retail, education, you name it. And in the same space, in education itself, it is evolving, right? And before, it was just, as I mentioned, you go into that physical place and you're on the blackboard or the whiteboard or whatever it is now. But now, for it to be sustainable, for us to move into what it ought to be, the individuals that we're training today, we have to be training them in a lot more than just the content, right? The teacher is a subject matter expert. They have to now be part of the distribution mechanism, which means that they need to be in studios delivering, recording content, whether for their own classroom or in situations where we have shortages, like now, for example, where we can pull some of the best and we distribute it on local TV, we distribute it to YouTube, to Twitter, to Instagram, you name it, right? So, and then they're also part of the technological framework that we need to implement. What platform do we use? Do they need to have their own channels as teachers, right, on these platforms? If we take a look at, for example, a company I'm on the board on One-on-One, which is a online content, educational content distribution company. And right now, governments and institutions around the Caribbean is using One-on-One, but the strength for One-on-One is that they've pulled on some of the best teachers to start to create content. So whether from the primary, secondary, or tertiary, they have some of the best who are creating content for consumption. So it's so important now that in the Michael Teachers College, St. Joseph Teachers College, all of these different places, we are now building digital skills, technological advancement, and we're also teaching content creation, as opposed to just subject matter experts.
So you'd say the top 3 skills that you want the teachers to learn coming out of Teachers College would be content creation,
right?
Ability. I mean, you know, you're saying they're in a studio, so some kind of performing, training, acting, that kind of stuff.
Presentation skills, right?
Presentation skills, right? And then what was technology? The use of the technology. But like, give me a specific.
But think about the use of technology, for example, and I'm sure Nicole probably has some experience during the pandemic now in terms of, you know, just being a part of the entire ecosystem of teachers and schools and so forth that are looking to prepare people to the next step, tertiary and so forth. The minute the pandemic came and schools were closed, right, we got requests to send in proposal to train teachers to use Zoom, to use Google Meet, right, to use all of these different platforms. And I'm not saying that is a public, that is a blanket, you know, on the entire circumstances and so forth. But a lot of these basic things that are required were not being taught as part of the teaching mechanism in schools, right? And even in business itself, for me, just some of the platforms that we now have to use, CRM tools, for example, customer relationship management tools. Some, you know, the basic use of it, how you set it up, how you do a live, like this live, for example, right? There's a typical Zoom, but then you can use Zoom and stream to a live platform that is more interactive with the chats and the different, and the this and the less interruption and so forth. There's so much more to be done to be able to, and it's not just education, it's not an indictment on just education, right? It's also on businesses to conduct an AGM and all of these different things. So these are some of the tools that are fundamental for teachers coming out of, you know, training, moving into the post COVID-19 environment.
All right, thanks, Tyrone. I just want to add though that, you know, learning to use Zoom, which is a video conferencing technology, also requires a different type of instructional method to deliver on Zoom and to have effective learning. So, you know, just in terms of something being the distribution of voice and video or recorded voice and video is not enough. Just saying this generally, there has to be even stronger instructional methods built into just your talking head, right? Talk in front of a class. You may catch some of the people, but if you go and talk in front of Zoom, just like you talk in front of a class, it's not gonna work because kids are gonna tune out, they're gonna turn off the camera on somewhere else and they click it on somewhere else on their machine. So just like what you said in terms of the learning management system in the background within the platform that can track what is also happening, the balance of having an improved set of instructional methods built in is essential. I want to move. Go ahead.
Sorry, and just to add, it really comes down to just the fundamentals because the technology will always change. So I use Zoom as an example. It might be something else at the next pandemic or the next disaster, natural disaster, right? But it's just the mindset around innovation and utilizing technology and having that as an integral part of whatever it is that we're doing. I think that's a fundamental thing. So a lot of things will change. Next year, it might be something else.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Tyrone. I want to quickly move on because we're running out of time. I want to move on to the section where we talk about future planning and future proofing education. So I'm just going to present the questions to some general questions, and then I hope I'll get some responses from each of the panelists. So when we're talking about future-proofing education and learning in Jamaica, we're talking about anticipating future events. COVID was not a future event, right? That's an unexpected event. So also being able to withstand the impact of an unexpected event. So future events as well as unexpected events. And what is the role of family, of schools and teachers, of business, of government? So I'm going to throw it out. We're going to start with what's the role of family in the future proofing of education and learning in Jamaica. Nicole, you leaning forward to your mic. You look like you want to say.
Yeah, I feel like the people with kids should start.
Nicole, I feel like I can knock that one out the park. You know. You're on mute.
I'm sorry, the muting always mashing me up. Am I the only one with a child on this panel?
I have 4. I can probably throw in.
You and Marvin.
But you have way more than me.
This one.
Oh, I'm to answer my own question?
Well, I wanted you to hear what you thought of it, and then I will jump in.
You know, Nicole is a good student, you know, because she waited on the teacher to explain.
Go on.
I'm okay. Oh, so what I will say, right, is that if we look back at our theme of developing talent and skills, focusing on talent and skills for the future, skills that can transcend the future, then families have to recognize when schools do not serve the full purpose of their children. In fact, I believe that a school cannot serve the entire passion and interest of.
Nor should they be charged with.
Pardon me?
Nor should they be expected to.
Exactly. So the parents, parents generally, they hand over the children to schools to nurture and develop them, right? And what we know is that cannot do the job alone.
The handover, Marvin, is one of the biggest mistakes. The complete handover and the expectation that comes with it is one of the hugest mistakes that I see parents make.
Right. So we're talking about the fact that families on a whole, however they are comprised, right, have to become more aware of what their children's passion, talent, skills, interests are, and see how they can support that alongside education and learning in the future.
I agree, teacher. Thank you. And on that, I want to say that it's not something, I'm not like critiquing parents or saying that they necessarily know how to do that in the first place. I think there is a disconnect between what we see happening around the world and then how we are almost expecting our kids to engage with that. It's like we're almost not expecting our kids to be a part of that, but to be on the periphery of it almost. So it's like when you think about gaming, I'm just give you an example. A popular point of contention between many parents and their children is gaming, okay? And I see it all the time. And so they'll come in and say, the kid is really into gaming. That's what they love. And the parent is in total, you need to be a doctor. And yet the gaming industry is one of the biggest industries around the world and growing as we speak. But there is no appreciation of the possibility that your child could be a part of that industry, not just as a participant, but as a creator, but as a business person, as there's so much more to the whole thing, as somebody who advises on the ethics of the game, somebody who in the psychologist consulting with the game design, the user experience person. I mean, there's just so much that could come from that one love of gaming. And so my thing is an opening of our minds as parents to believe in the possibilities of our children and encourage them not just to be consumers, but to be creators and to see themselves in that way. One example I want to give quickly is where the other day my daughter come now, she's writing a book, she's gonna be an author, and she write her book, and now, oh God, her parents have needed to edit it for weeks. But the point is, it never occurred to her that she couldn't be a writer. When I got the idea to write of my first book, right? To how I had so many voices in my head saying, you're not an author, you can't do that. Only some people are authors, right? And here is my daughter now, because they've made books in class already. They've written quote unquote books now. You know, I'm not saying it's not big academic thing that can go sell in store or anything like that. But the point is, they see themselves as authors, not just as books that get written by other people. And so just more of that as parents, and willingness to research and to engage and to look for opportunities to push our children. And I know as parents, we need to be better equipped to bridge that gap for our children so that their talents and interests are served. And it's not just in the classroom or nothing, but it's, oh, my friend owns a business like that, or I know somebody who is also into that, I'm gonna make you talk to them, or I'm gonna look online and find an online course, or I'm gonna look online for somebody who does that to connect you. You know, just kind of looking for the opportunities and giving them the outlets as much as we are able to and can afford to as parents for them to have that expression.
I agree, Nicole. I see comments from the audience saying parent training. That's an opportunity for you, Nicole. I'd also add that the documentation of your child's passion is important, not just when you come to Nicole to do the college application. Once you see that interest, whether it is from 3 years old, 4 years old, right up, follow the interest of it, you know, the children shall lead, right? Whatever they're interested in, you know, you see it.
Yeah.
Right? And it's important to expose them to a wide variety of stuff.
Absolutely.
In their development, because you never know. You know, so many possibilities, as you said. Yeah, so let's move on to the next one, schools and teachers. Future proofing, what schools and teachers can do. Tyrone, I will give you that one.
Give me the hard one. What is it? Schools and teachers.
We have your back, don't worry.
Tyrone, I have for you. Force him to go first.
Yeah, man, go first, Marvin.
Schools and teachers, listen to what Nicole and Tyrone have to say.
Disrupt on the panel. Okay, I am mute.
All right. So, well, quickly to add to Nicole's family, I think one of the family point, one of the roles is to enable curiosity in learning. Also, I'm sure a lot of parents would have, you know, revolted at the student or their child coming home wanting to be a, you know, the term content creator. Let's just say a content creator. It'd be like, what the hell is that? Or a YouTube star, right? And those things. Now, in the schools, I think one of the things that we need to enable in the schools is the environment, right? Create that kind of environment that facilitates, again, that level of curiosity from the child, from the student, to push the boundaries of whatever it is that they are learning, right? And this is whatever discipline, whatever subject, whatever it is, just kind of enable that curiosity in that environment so that individuals can, you know, explore deeper what it is that they're interested in, and, you know, to enable a practical environment. One of the things that is always important in learning, in my view, is that you need to be able to apply it almost immediately in real life, right? Maybe not in a job, but in your environment, right? And when you look at subjects like chemistry and so forth, the type of curiosity is what helps to understand it more and solve the problems. I mean, I couldn't learn nothing in chemistry by just looking at the board and trying to understand those formulas and so forth. But the minute we got to being in the lab and experimenting more, that's when I kind of started to understand it. So we have to promote diversity too in thoughts and methods.
Yes.
We realize that things are solved in many different ways, and sometimes we learn something, even the teacher, sometimes because we learn it this way, we try to teach it the way we learn it, but other students, learn in so many different ways and so forth. So we have to facilitate that, facilitate the practical environment, project-based learning, and so forth. And I think that is a responsibility we have. And then more on the administrative side of schools now, the business side of school is that we have to treat schools like businesses, right? Not because the budget is coming from the ministry, or we're not for profit, means that we shouldn't conduct the school in such a way, as if we're doing this. The customers are the students and their parents that are paying for it, and you have a responsibility to deliver a good product, which is good education, and then in return, that builds your institution, which is why I am all about grading schools and so forth. As the people might oppose to it, and entry level marks and this and that, I'm all for it because it promotes a competitive environment. It promotes that kind of business-like environment where you want to be the number one, and in order to be the number one, this is how you get it done. So most importantly, you need to be that business-minded institution.
Thanks, Tyrone. So schools and teachers must see themselves more like businesses. Well,
yes.
Important aspect of business that they can transfer. I'm gonna skip over to government, and I'm going to.
Oh, I wanted to just add quickly that also in seeing yourself as a business, you would make sure that you're providing services that your clients want to actually consume, right? So meeting them where they are and finding ways to give them what they need or want from the learning and the subjects and the things you're.
Absolutely. I want to open up to questions from the attendees. They have been with us in the chat for a long time, so I'm going to open up to questions. We want to see questions coming up now, but while the questions are coming, let's talk about the role of government in terms of future-proofing education and learning. And when we look at government, we're not picking any particular government. It's not a political argument, it's a national argument, right? It is about the government being the largest supplier of education to the country, and how do we future-proof that in Jamaica, right? Those are the things we want to discuss. Anybody want to take that?
I'll take Marvin.
Thanks, Ali.
Yeah, so one of the things that kept coming up for me in the conversation, both around business and what we can do with education, was that really in a country like Jamaica, it's relatively cost effective for universal access to connectivity. Whether that be, through broadband or satellite, and make learning sites available to all students for free. So through partnerships with like Flow and Digital, for example, our government can curate or significantly subsidize educational platforms so that all students have access to smartphones.
Ali, you put your mic, something's happening.
Let me raise it to my face. Is that better?
Nicole can mute too. I think if we all mute.
Can you hear me better now?
Good to go.
Okay, awesome. Where did I cut out? Marvin, you're muted, so I can't hear where I cut out.
Beginning.
Sorry, you're talking about educational platforms and supporting educational platforms, subsidizing.
Sure. Yeah, so I think that both in business partnerships with schools, but really overarchingly, from the perspective of government, it's super important that we ensure there's universal access to connectivity for students, especially in future-proofing education. I would argue that the COVID pandemic was not such an unforeseen crisis. You know, there's a lot of evidence to suggest that these crises can be mitigated, or the risk for crises like this can be mitigated. And one of the ways is through future-proofing education, so that not all industries or you know, areas of citizen engagement are disrupted in a crisis like this one. So the first thing I would say is, you know, look at what it costs to universally, provide universal access to connectivity for Jamaicans, particularly if we're going to be providing subsidized electronic devices, or schools are going to be asked to provide tablets, etc., for students. Make learning sites free. I know, for example, that RJR was testing broadcasting lessons on television, dependent on data penetration rates versus, you know, television watching rates. I don't know what the academic term is for that. You know, it might be important for us to explore those different options. But also, I think there needs to be some level of partnership between government and business to ensure that there's flexibility in parents' work arrangements, so that parents can engage in the supervision of their children while at school, while still meaningfully contributing to their work. So work from home arrangements, I think, need to be compatible with school from home arrangements. I don't have all of the answers for that because I'm not a parent, but I think those are some things that we need to consider.
Thanks, Ali. Anybody else have any?
Why Nicole looks stressed out? Because she's supervising children with school right now.
Because I'm just so relieved that they went back. Mine too went back to school last week, but the point is I was relieved because I don't know how much online learning can really happen when they're that little. It is very, very hard. I don't know. I know that for the bigger ones, it's easier to do all of these things, but the little ones, I found it extremely difficult.
Yeah, man. And just continuing the discussion in terms of the role of government, they own the most schools in terms of design. You know, you can imagine a scenario where rows of desks were connected together, or even desks were like connected to the ground. What do you do when COVID happens? I mean, you're in an environment that is very static, and so I think part of future-proofing education and learning is to have more flexible, physically flexible environments moving forward. We see the ability for schools to shift to a different classroom organization, very difficult, because all of a sudden, how do you move rows of desks out that are all connected together if they're, you know, stuck to the ground? You know, so one of the things I think is important to consider is how you make the physical environment flexible. That's a key thing, and I think it's plaguing a lot of our schools right now, trying to get ready for, you know, this blended new normal type of learning.
I agree.
Yeah, just trying to see if any other.
There's one question, Marvin, I wanted to touch. There was a question in the chat about how do teachers, you know, sort of more deeply engage students in their interest areas and help to further their interests and respect their interests. And one of the ways, I have two suggestions. And one is to, you know, look, for example, again, it depends on how your classroom is equipped, but one thing that has been very exciting to me are these very conversations, the ability for Zoom to have me in my home more quickly agreeing to sit on a panel versus if I had to drive to go there and do all of that. So I think the availability of expertise and people who are willing to, you know, jump on a Zoom with your class and tell them about this cool career that you have at Google, or to jump on a Zoom and to talk about, you know, X or life as a YouTuber, or, you know what I mean? So, or the business of YouTubing. And so I think that to the extent that students or teachers can work with their whole parent body and that whole network to access more and put out calls for more people from different experiences, backgrounds, with different areas of expertise and careers and interests to just zoom in and talk to the kids for 45 minutes about, you know, what you need to do to become a blah, 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 or what things are important to become a XYZ, or, you know, about their either career interests or subject area interests. I think that would be a fun idea to bring in different speakers into the classroom. And then the other thing I would say is there's so many online resources and free classes around many of the things that interest students. And so, you know, introducing those opportunities to students and even facilitating them, I think that'd be super fun.
I love those ideas, Nicole. And our teachers are extremely resourceful. We know that. I think that part of the challenge they have is, you know, they have an exam to prepare the students for, or a test. And so that is really what drives and governs most of their activity. And so, you know, again, it probably comes back to who determines the curriculum and why, and how we try and adjust that so that we can accommodate time for a teacher to do something like this. You know, I see persons in the chat talking about rural schools and technology, and I agree that that's one of their approaches. But what happens when there's no technology access in a particular community, right? What if it's the one teacher with the smartphone? We also have to be thinking as well, how do we solve the problem when there is zero technology? It means going back to basics. I mean, online learning, AKA distance learning, has always existed. Correspondence courses, for example. I feel like, yes, the teacher is still becomes this curator, this person, as Tyrone said, who can prepare the content and create the content and help to find a way to share it with the students. It could be from the smartphone. You know, the Zoom can be on the smartphone, but it could also be a letter. If your child is a writer, you take that letter from that child, you take a picture of it, you send it to that person, and you create this virtual correspondence. I mean, we have to talk more about ways that we use the technology when only one person has it and uses it to share it with the class.
And it, just to add to Marvin, it kind of levels the playing field, right? Let's say, for example, you have the best teacher in the country in math, right? Or accounting or whatever it is. Now I was using the mic here. Clearer now? So, yeah, so I'm saying you know, that the access to the content helps to level the playing field a lot, especially when you have the best in a specific subject or area that can create that content and distribute, right? So instead of knowing, for example, that, you know, JC has the best math teacher and you have to go to JC to be good at math, you can now have that math teacher at JC delivering instruction via whatever content distribution mechanism. And so more individuals across the country, especially those in the rural areas, as I'm seeing a lot of those being mentioned in the chat, can now get access to. So it creates a more equitable kind of society where, you know, if you look in other developed countries and so forth, the access to good content and so forth is more accessible. And, you know, having that kind of infrastructure here and support, it helps to, you know, as I say, level the playing field for a lot of individuals coming up in schools.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny you mentioned that, Tyrone, because this whole leveling of the playing field is happening in education, but it's happening also in work. You know, there was this article in the Financial Times recently about this guy who essentially was working from home and outsourced his job to, you know, a company in China, right? And, you know, each quarter they were reporting, and he did a good job, but he essentially took part of his salary, paid to outsource it, and, you know, was able to still accomplish other things that he was interested in. So why am I bringing this up? I'm bringing it up because the playing field is level. So teachers and students can have access to anybody in the world. to any curriculum in the world that is online. And so, you know, schools have to rethink how they position themselves. Teachers have to rethink how they position themselves as brands, as businesses, as content creators that can serve even more people when the technology is involved. You know, a student doesn't have to, as you said, attend JC to get that teacher. A student can sit right where they are and access that practitioner that they're interested in, whether it's the YouTuber or the gamer. And, you know, Nicole mentioned the gaming industry. And I just wanted to add that you can become an esports person who is competing and people are watching and you earn money from that. So the very skill that sometimes the parents are concerned about, if they were able to nurture that interest, it can become a career, you know, and so many career options are being opened up by having access to the technology, you know.
And quickly, Marvin, in doing so, right, what this enables also is for people to learn more in the same amount of time that they're given initially. For example, learning now doesn't need to be during school time, 8 to 2, 8 to 3, right? Where if you're sick for some strange reason, you're playing catch up, right? You're behind. If there's some emergency or whatever it is, or even if you play sports and you have to practice more because finals coming up, or it's Manning Cup time, or it's Champs time, or whatever. And for me, for example, going to JC, I didn't play sports because of, you know, my illness, but I used to tutor a lot of the Champs and Manning Cup guys a lot. So I used to be friends with a lot of them because I used to tutor them. I used to teach them. You know, some of them come in not reading at a certain level. So I would teach them how to read, teach them at the miss school, or they come to school, but they're so tired because they had a big game yesterday and they have to come in for 8:30 and then they fall asleep by lunchtime, or they don't have any money or whatever it is. And what you find is that these guys fall behind. A lot of them were interested in learning and very interested in being a part of class, but they're doing a lot more than what, you know, the typical student is doing, in that you just need to attend school and so forth. But these guys are playing 2-3 sports. At JC, for example, you play Manning Cup September to December, and then January you're a part of Champs, right? You're around 400 meters, the hurdles. But how did these guys catch up? And it's the same reality that we have today, right? Where the guys who are playing sports are underperforming in school. There are various reasons, but one of the reasons is that access to the content. When they do miss class because they're doing Champs for a week, or Manning Cup on the weekend and can't finish the homework, how do they catch up? So that kind of leveling of the playing field, I think technology can enable it. And it's something that we need to invest in the content and the means to get the content to these individuals who are disadvantaged. Because it's not just sports. I mean, I grew up with sickle cell, so sometimes I miss a semester of school, right? And you come back and you're clueless, right? So these are the things that, you know, we have to invest in a lot to help to change the environment.
Yeah, man. Thanks, Tyrone. I just, my apologies to the attendees. I'm just seeing the Q&A section in isolation. So,
well, we were looking at the questions, so we tried to answer some of them.
Oh, okay, great. Because I see one, how does the education industry prepare for the move to robotics from human labor? I see why that one would jump out.
Sounds like you, Marvin.
Sounds like me. In a few words, learn computer science. That's the answer. Learn computer science, learn to code. You know, so many opportunities online to do that, but that's the easiest. That's the easiest, because robots need to be programmed by people. Robots need to be repaired by people. So, you know, you learn the robotics, you learn computer science, the engineering, you tie it all together. That's how the industry, I would say the industry needs to have more computer science offerings from early in the educational system. Somebody was asking about how we grade schools. Cadia, Tyrone, you had mentioned grading schools. What could you elaborate a little bit more on that for Cadia?
Well, I mean, typically now it's a lot of the external and independent research that is being done. That's what I was referring to, the kind of school rankings and so forth. But as I say, the more you focus on the business side of education, that will kind of, push a more competitive environment outside of just sports, right? We're very competitive in sports, in the big three, which account quiz, school challenge quiz as one, we count that as JC. But Manning Cup and track and field, less than say Manning Cup, football and track and field. Those are competitive, but in the academic side, if we get to that to be more competitive and operate as a business, then it helps to create a more competitive environment where people want to rank this and rank that, and maybe government can get involved in that way, and private sector too, to enable a more competitive environment, just in terms of even endowment funds and investments and all of these things, to enable these schools to grow and be better at what they do.
Thanks, Tyrone. I get in the wrap-up signal. The conversation has been so interesting, and we could go on and on. But let me, as moderator, thank all of you for being a part of this panel with me. Nicole McLaren-Campbell from AIM Online Academy, Ali Matalon from CorpCare, and Tyrone Wilson from iCreate. I just want to thank you for joining me on this panel and for giving your honest opinions and ideas so freely in terms of how we can move education and learning forward in the future. Thank you. I'm going to hand over to
Thank you very much.
Renee.
Thank you so much.
Close it off.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. I promised you a very dynamic and rich conversation, and you've had it. To all of you, I want to say a big thank you. I know that you have to slip off because a number of you have meetings, and we started a bit late, but I want to thank you so much for reminding us about how adaptable we need to be as an education system, as teachers. We need to be flexible. As parents, we need to understand our children and who they are, and reach them where they are, and stop trying to tell them who we want them to be. The careers that end in OR and ER are no longer that relevant. The social, who knew that we would be advertising for social media experts and managers and what have you today? And there's so many things that have come out of this discussion. There's just a mindset shift that I think we have to do, and this whole innovation, thinking about innovation in different ways is what we have to approach. So I'm going to allow you, my panelists, to leave. I appreciate you, Marvin Hall. You did a wonderful job. I love those models, even though some of you did not really like doing them. But see, it's all about learning and adapting. And
Marvin was great. Yes, Marvin, big up.
I know, right? It was excellent,
yes.
excellent way.
Marvin, you put a lot of thought into it, and I did appreciate it.
Yeah,
And you know what? It shows that as teachers,
They crack the whip.
yes. Oh, I cracked the whip. As teachers, we really have to push. Some of us as teachers, we're the ones who are the most resistant.
I know. Least flexible.
Doing the things that we want our children to be able to do, but we have to start with ourselves and to really expand our learning and to be learning continuously so that our students can feel that same kind of energy and desire for learning. So thank you, everybody. This is Rich. You will get the recordings. Sorry, Marvin, you saying something? Or Tyrone?
No, I was saying big up to Nicole and Ali too. The guys are great.
Yes, they were. And as were you. I heard Tyrone speak somewhere about young people of the future, like a few years ago, talking about generation. Was it generation? At the time, it was
Gen Z.
Gen Z. We've moved on since then. It's crazy. I can't keep up. But I want to thank you, Tyrone, Marvin, Nicole, and Ali, for being such bright lights. This conversation is one that needs to be much bigger than this space right here, to be honest. It's one that we really need a national discourse that has to continue and be built upon, and you guys are the thought leaders in this. So I'm really happy to have you share with us in this way, and for us as educators in this room to open our minds to what you guys are seeing in the spaces that you operate in. And I'm really thrilled that you could be here. Now, I just want to share with you, everybody, on to housekeeping. So if my panelists have to go, I perfectly understand. But we've had some technical difficulties, as you know, earlier with the link. And we're sending you another link that you will have to click on, which you can do in this chat right here. It's about to be posted in there. And so I would like you to click on that link. And when you do, it will take you to the session at 5:30. It will also be sent to your email. And you can click on that as well. So we apologize that you're having to do that twice, but we will sort that out for tomorrow, and so that you will not have this issue when you log on for the duration of the session tomorrow. So kindly click on. You had a good time. I see all this excellent discourse, great conversation. I'm seeing your comments. Great job, everyone. I think so too. It was a really rich discussion, and I'm grateful that all of the persons who are on that panel were able to share in the way that they did. I'm so hopeful. So there's the link. It just went up. Please click on that link in order to get into the 5:30 session. That's going to be another really exciting one with some persons from Edna Manley, moderated by Colleen Douglas, Neela Ebanks, who is just the most amazing dancer and dance educator, Michael Sean Harris, same thing, a music educator and beautiful voice and voice coach and teacher, and also Marvin George, who is at the School of at Edna Manley as well. Delia Harris will be here, and you know, she has reinvented herself in so many ways, and her passion for the arts and culture, and particularly in education, is one that she is really obsessed with ensuring that the rest of us learn and try to instill in our teaching. So I really am looking forward to the next one as well. And so we will see you back here in a few minutes. Go grab some water. That's what I'm going to do. Grab a drink and come back. There are over 200 people in here. Don't go away. Click on the link and check your email as well, and you will receive the link there. Thank you. See you soon.
We're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. We're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. So we're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road. We're ready for the road. So we're ready. We're ready, yeah, we're ready, we're ready, yeah, we're ready, 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 yeah, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready, we're ready. We're ready for the road.